Well, good morning. That was close. I have this whole 1 minute countdown timer thing, and I clicked that, and then I clicked the live broadcast, and its wheels are spinning, and its wheels are spinning, and it gave me an error. Said, no, try again later. So I hit it again, and it's spinning, and it's spinning, and it's spinning, and it gives me an error. No! So I tried it again, and we did make it through. Yay! Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Um, Listen, this week we're going to do part two of Freestanding Lace. As promised, we're going to watch kind of stitch out, and then I'm going to rinse it out, and then we're going to look at the finished product. What do you say? Good morning. Oh, good morning, Cindy. Yeah, Fort Worth. I only budget 3 trips a year. And this year I have a week-long class for live education for the software I use for digitizing. And actually, I've been waiting almost 3 years for that class because of COVID. I had it signed up, and then COVID hit and everything got canceled. And this year they brought it back, and I'm just determined to go to that class. So, but next year, or wait, I'm looking at Lafayette for the everything embroidery market next year. Just a thought, in case you might be interested. Um, so what are we doing today? We're gonna do part two of freestanding lace, and wait till you see the mess I made. Yep. All right. So I did finish the embroidery, and I did stitch it out and recorded it for you, and I washed it out, and yeah, let's take a look at that. Let me get that up on the screen here. Of course, Alt Tab. Where'd it go? No, that's not it. Oh, here we are. So here it is stitching out. Now I want you to watch this. I want you to watch how I stitched 2 layers. Yeah, that's something that you need to remember. Your starts and stops. We'll go through that here in just a minute as soon as this is done. But I stitched the 2 layers. Then I stitched the hanger, 2 more layers, and then the satin. Oh, look at my video got backwards. Uh, I had to record it in sections and then build it back. So 2 layers, the hanger, 2 more layers, and then we go back and do the satin. All right. So I said you would see it stitching. I didn't say it would be stitching in the right order. Oh, wait. Where'd my mouse go? There it is. Hey. So what was the total stitch count? Good question. I can't tell you right now because if I go look, we're changing screens. But I'll tell you in a minute. One of the things I did here is I used a little French knot piece. I used a little French knot piece to make this little bubbles. Yeah. Total stitch count, Cindy, 17,570 stitches for what amounts to a 4x4 Christmas ornament, Christmas tree. Gonna go to full screen here because I'm going to hide a bunch of stuff. Hide it. Gonna hide this. Oh, thank you, Cindy. Cindy says we have some beautiful detail. Well, a digitizer's job is to put all the pieces, as much as possible, in the design file that is in the artwork. Oh, why did that not hide? Okay, so first layer. Okay, one of the things I didn't cover was the starts and stops, which is very important. And you'll see why here in just a minute. So here's the first layer. I go in here and I look for my starts and stops. Here's my start way up here and my stop. Oops, that was a bit excessive. Sorry. Are you getting dizzy? My stop is way down here. So in the next part, you want to do it the opposite way because you don't want it to have to travel all the way back up to another place and then come back down again. So on the next layer, oh, for crying out loud. I know, I'm like all over the place, aren't I? So on the next layer, we want our start down here and our stop up here. And remember I said we were going to do the hanger in between layers. There it is. And I'm going to go close up on this one. As you can see, when I did this last week, my start and stop is up here. Going back to Cindy here in just a second. Cindy wants to know if I said I had 4 layers of lace in the background. Yes, there are 4 layers. That's my typical standard basic lace. And I use a 4 millimeter density. What that means is that in between each of these rows of stitches is 4 millimeters. Okay, I do a 90-degree and a 0-degree, and then I do 2 angles. But let's go back to this hanger piece. There's the start, there's the stop. That's going to become an issue, and you're going to see why in just a bit. You should really bury it where it's going to get stitched over. Remember, the whole thing with freestanding lace is all those stitches have to lock together. Having the start and stop up here, they're not locking. And again, I'll show you how that works in just a minute. So we move our starts and stops so that they are down here. So we got a start and stop here. Going to our next layer. Which has its start right here. Let's go back down to 200 and stop here. And then again, we're going to start here and stop at the top. Now we have our 4 layers. We have our hanger. Cindy wants to know if you can do it with 2 layers and get more of a see-through look. I'm going to say yes. And it will work. It will work. The concern I have with that is that it might not have enough body in the layers to support the satin border. If we did this with, say, the 2 angles and the vertical, that would give us enough support. If we dropped one of the angles, Again, it can still work, but I would be afraid that there's not enough to support the satin stitching, which finishes off our edges and ties in with those two layers. So the edging is our last part. We're going to unhide these other two pieces. Unhide and unhide. So we've got our 4 layers. And again, we want our starts and stops. Okay. Now, depending on the look you're going for, you can do your inside the lace decorating before the satin, the border, or afterwards. That's totally your choice. I wanted some of that swirling to land on the border, so I did it afterwards. In fact, let's go ahead and show that. Where'd my mouse go? You know, you're running 2 monitors and your mouse decides to hide. Let's see. Unhide. So if you can see, I pulled some of these borders over. So they land right on top of the satin. And remember I said last week, pathing? Yes, Cindy, exactly. Your layers are also going to support any decorative stitching you do on the piece. Okay, remember your pathing is really important here. I'm going to break this apart. And so, what happened there? So what I'm doing here is I'm showing you so you see I did this first swirl and it tied into the second swirl, and then I did a travel stitch to come down here. And I did that because this swirl, I want that one to lay on top of everything. So again, your pathing is very important. Yes, Cindy, exactly. Depends on your inside detail as to whether you put your border first or last. I chose to do the border first because, like I said, I wanted some of this detail to actually land on top of the satin. So we're going to back up here. We're going to put all of this back together because I want you to see how this stitches, and we're going to do a virtual stitch out. And we're going to get past all of this and go straight to our inside work. Come on. So if you're watching this, I think, hold on just a second. We're going to pause and see if something we can do here. All right. Let's go ahead and hide the background. We know what that looks like. Okay. Let's play this again. I want you to be able to see it. So I changed the color and got rid of some of the excess pieces. We'll go ahead and speed it up just a little bit. So you see the pathing. And some of that is computer generated pathing. I set the preliminary pathing and then I locked them all together. I merged them together. And then the software does some of its work. But ultimately, the last thing that's going to get stitched is that one, this one here from the primary body, this piece here was stitched last to cover all of those ends that were left open. Then, of course, we have this little detail here. Okay, so let's change this back. Yep. And then, because we had some space, because it is a Christmas tree, I put little bubbles, bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. Now this is in this design file, I've made this into 3 colors. Cindy made a point last week where our original artwork had all kinds of colors, and it would have been monstrously huge to change colors every 2 seconds. So I made these little French knot pieces and just resize them and place them. Okay, so after that is done, after we've done our digitizing, what did we do? We put it on the machine and stitched it. You saw the stitch out. Of course, now I don't know where I am again. We saw the stitch work. And where'd it go? Do, do, do. Let's look at, we're missing something. Now we're going to cut it out. And you know what? I'm missing a video. You notice I take my scissors and I'm going to cut it trim it as close as I can because we want to take off as much, excess of that water-soluble stabilizer. We already know that it's going to be hard to wash out because that's just the nature. But so we want to reduce that. And you know, I have one other video and it's not showing up. What do we got here? Let me see if I can find that. Oh, you know, I've worked to get all of this just right. And of course, it's not. Let me see. Let's try something. Did I? Here it is. We're just going to go with this one. This is the uncut version, the unedited version. You get to listen to my I'm washing it out. Oh, you can't even see it because I didn't even change the. Here we go. I'm washing it out. I'm going to go back. I'm going to try to go back. Let's turn off the sound. But see, when I wash out, I rub it between my hands and then I start pulling on things. And look at what happened. Can you see that? Yeah. When it's done washing, I then, stalling here, where'd it go? Just lay it on paper towel off to the side. I pat it flat, I dry it out, The next day I go back and this is our final product. Look at that. Can you see that? Who can um who can tell me why that happened? Cindy, when I do freestanding lace, I do use 2 layers of the water soluble because I want to make sure that I have enough support for all those stitches. Now, in this particular case, I used 3 layers only because I cut it too short and it wouldn't fold over and fit in the hoop properly. And of course, you want to make sure that everything fits in the hoop properly. Cindy also wants to know if this will be available on my website. And oops, where'd it go? Wants to know if it'll be available on my website. And you know what? I can put it on there, and you won't have to buy it. I will put it on there as a free design. I'll post a link in my group. Um, I'll post a link so that you guys can find it. And I had an idea with this. Oh, come on. So I had an idea to go with this. Um, where'd it go? What am I trying to do here? Oh, you're right. Cindy says that she's heard of people using a bucket to rinse it out, that it could clog up the sink. But I only do if I were doing masses of freestanding lace, I would have a concern with that. But I did one, and the last time I used the water soluble was like 6 months ago. And there's been a lot of water that's gone through that sink since then. So I'm not too worried about it. But if I were doing something like this in masses, um, then yes, I would definitely wash out in a different way. So, Cindy, why did the loop fray? Because of the start and stop. Do you remember back when we started? And unhide all, unhide all. I said unhide all. There we go. I'm setting things up for you guys. And remember when we started and I was talking about the starts and stops? And our start and stop was right here. That's exactly where that's exactly where it fell apart. And it fell apart because this stitch was not locked in. By moving the start and stop in here, it is now locked in and it will not fray. So that is pretty much our freestanding lace. Um, so here's some thoughts. When I was doing this, as I was working with this, I'll be here, Cindy. You go ahead. Cindy's screen froze up. She's going to restart. Um, so while I was doing this, I had I had a thought. What if we didn't put the little bubbles on there? What if we just ended after the tree was built and we washed it all out and we dried it all out? And instead of putting the little French knots here, we used glue on crystals or beads or, little colored dots of some sort. What do you think? And the one that I'm going to put on screen or on the site, I'll make sure that it has 3 color changes. So you can decide for yourself if you want to do a green tree with gold swirls and silver bubbles. But there's a lot you can do with this. That's the nice thing about embroidery is it's not just thread. You can take your just thread. Of course, I'm sitting here pulling on just thread, but you can take your just thread project and dress it up. Um, use it's a multimedia kind of frenzy we got going these days. Use your imagination. Use glitter vinyl. Can you imagine mylar? Can you imagine putting mylar between the 4 layers? If you put it in that second layer, Cindy wants to know if I used a matching bobbin on the back side of this. And if I were doing this for production, I probably would. But for our test work, I used a black bobbin instead of a blue bobbin. Yeah. But you can't tell. And then, not that you want to shave off the knots, but I use a Peg's eraser, which is just a little peanut shaver that you can get at your local discount store for like $20. Um, and I would just trim this off. I would stand them all up and then just run the shaver over it. Not so deep as to cut the thread below the knot, but just enough to get rid of the the tails on the end. So that's our basic freestanding lace. I'm wondering if you guys have any specific questions about how to do freestanding lace and why it doesn't fall apart. Of course, ours did because our start and stop was not in the proper location. When you're doing freestanding lace, whether you buy it from a stock design, which is very popular this year. Oh, Cindy's suggesting that you could put a bead of run a heat gun over the back, and you could. Um, that would because this thread is a polyester type thread. It'll melt back, which is like we do with our patches. But freestanding lace seems to be very popular right now, and I want you to understand that when you go to rinse it, you need to tug on it a little bit. You need to see if it's going to fall apart. You don't want to give this as a gift and then have it get wet on somebody and fall apart. That's kind of what started all of this. And I wish I had it. I would show it to you. But there was a freestanding lace piece that was being done. It was leaves, and there was a stem on the leaf, and at the very bottom of that stem, it just unraveled because it didn't have anything to hold into. So, Cindy, you're right. It's amazing what you can do with just thread. Um, Anybody that knows me knows that I follow Eric Campbell. He is an industry standard in digitizing for embroidery. And one of the things that he has done in the past, Cindy says that if it falls apart, you have to go back to the drawing board. And you sure do, because you got to check why it's falling apart. Um, but Eric Campbell has used a technique like this to actually build patches that use no fabric backing. Yeah, it can be done. It's all in the number of layers and the density settings. It's something to experiment with. Play with it a little bit. All right. Cindy is currently has been at the Impressions Expo in Fort Worth, Florida, or Fort Worth, Florida, Fort Worth, Texas. Sorry, Texas. I flubbed. And she was looking to meet Eric Campbell. He did a class there on patches, but they missed each other in passing. There'll be other opportunities. He's a teacher. He teaches at a lot of the different major shows. And of course, you can always find him on YouTube. Just Eric, Erich Campbell, and just search Eric Campbell embroidery. You'll find him all over the place. So while we're getting ready to finish up here, any questions on freestanding lace? Any thoughts or suggestions on next week? I think I think one of the things that to go back to, Cindy has met Eric before, and of course there's Educational Friday. For those of you that don't know, on Fridays you can find a lot of embroidery and marketing and business building education live videos on Fridays. Thank you, Cindy. We did we did okay last week with Freestanding Lace Part 1, but we weren't able to finish. This week we finished, and you're right. I think we did a good job with Freestanding Lace. And I think next week we might talk a little bit about business building. Uh, I've, I'm currently rebuilding my website so that custom orders can be requested on web. And I'm learning a lot about building websites. So maybe that's something we can approach next week. Maybe not. Maybe there's a more pressing question that's going to happen between now and next week, and we'll pick that up. But, oh, patches are everywhere too. Cindy's right. Cindy's right. We can talk about patches. I have There are two primary patch techniques that I use, or the website. Yeah, we can figure something out. But there are two primary patch types that I use. I have a full fill, where the background is fully filled with thread, and then an applique style patch. And I approach them two different ways. Maybe other people do something different. Um, but we can talk about how I approach patches and website and patches. Okay. All right. Um, we won't do both in the same show. We don't, there isn't time for that. Uh, but, future episodes. And with that, I think we're going to say goodbye. You guys have a great weekend. You have an even more awesome week. I'll see you soon. If you have any questions, just reach out to me at quick2stitch.com or quick2stitch at gmail.com. Bye now. Wasn't that fun? Do you have more questions? Do you want to learn something new? Join me at quick2stitch.com for coffee and conversation, and we'll talk about it. Embroidery machines, designs, and business. Hope to see you soon. Bye now.